While this award is not based on statistical performance, it is widely accepted that the team performed better because of the contributions of this person. Winners of this award are former student athletes who, during their participation, displayed consummate leadership and dedication to their team, loyalty and commitment to the program, and were proactive in the pursuit of achieving team goals.
I don't know where they get those old pictures. It's you know, your hairstyles over time are, you know, really very embarrassing. But I'm glad you got to hear the Little League story, because that's a good starting point for my remarks. I look out over this audience, and I'm looking at current athletes who are the second generation of Title IX babies. I'm looking at the team that was just honored, the softball team that was just honored, which is the first generation, maybe even the generation before my generation of having played sports. And I think it's really important for all of us to recognize that when Title IX passed in 1972, it had absolutely nothing to do with intercollegiate athletics or scholastic sports. It was an omnibus education law. And it was passed because my grandmother, my mother, could not go to college and decide she wanted to be an engineer or to go to business school or to be a medical doctor or to be a lawyer. Prior to Title IX, all of our professional schools were pretty much closed to women unless your daddy donated the money to build the medical school. There were quotas of 10%, 12%. On the number of women admitted into the professional schools. The percentage of women who were lawyers and doctors at the time were in the single digits. And what Title IX really did was open the doors of educational opportunity, well-paying jobs, prestigious jobs, to generations of women. Prior to that time, just think about it. If you were a woman, you were relegated, if you wanted to get a master's degree or even a PhD, you were relegated to the caretaking professions. You could be a social worker, you could be a nurse, you could be a teacher. Instead of taking care of people and kids, you could take care of books, you could be a librarian. But that was it. They were the lowest paying jobs in our society, some of the most important jobs in our society, and they were almost predominantly, these positions were filled by women. And Title IX has changed that, has opened the doors of opportunity for women. It's also important to think back in terms of where we were in 1972. I was just talking to one of our sponsors who was saying how he was a soccer player. And in 1972, nobody played soccer. Nobody played lacrosse. You didn't see championships at the high school or the college level in those sports for women or for men. And in terms of women's sports, women were absolutely made fun of if they participated in the aggressive team sports. Softball was one of them. Ice hockey, God forbid, you should let women play ice hockey. Even lacrosse was something we wouldn't have let our daughters play. And I think back to those times and how far we've come in sport, and I really lament now that we haven't relieved the pressures on girls in general who don't play sports. I'll give you some statistics that are horrific to me in terms of the outrageous expectations that we place on females. By the age of 17, a girl has seen 250,000 television advertisements telling her that she should have a body type or size she will probably never be able to achieve. By the age of 6, first grade, 42% of girls in grades 1 to 3 say they want to be thinner. 51% of girls who are age 9 to 10 say they feel better if they are dieting. 53% of 13-year-olds say they are unhappy with their bodies, and that percentage increases to 78% by the age of 17. That's the kind of pressure that we're still putting on women in our society. And we're living in a culture today, and we're almost insulated from that when we're in sports, because it is a very different place than the world out there for non-athletic girls. But we also live in a culture where too many young men seek acceptance from each other by disrespecting women or by dominating women. We live in a culture where that kind of environment leads to 1 out of every 5 college women being sexually assaulted. 1 out of every 5 college women. And so I'm here to tell you good news, because that's the bad news, is that sport is probably the antidote. The antidote to that kind of sexism and that kind of treatment, because it gives women the gift of confidence, of strong self-images, stronger self-concepts, and in fact, all the performing arts do that, whether it's dance or drama or music. They all give those gifts. But what's important about sport in comparison is we've let women come out of the highly feminized gender norm in our society. We've let them feel good about muscles. We've let them feel good about power. We now live in a society that looks up to female athletes who excel at sport. And the performing arts are still dominated by highly sexualized expectations. It was no accident last year when Beyonce, one of my favorite singers, has to appear half-clothed at the Super Bowl. So there are still pressures on women in the performing arts, but not so much on women who are participating in sports, unless, of course, you count women who have to play sand volleyball at the Olympic Games, and the International Volleyball Federation still insists on bikinis no matter what for those women. But I stand here before you saying that those of us in sport who have chosen to play sports are incredibly fortunate because we have been encouraged to be strong. We have been encouraged to be proud of our muscular and powerful bodies, to be confident. We have been encouraged to wear uniforms that are functional rather than sexually flattering. So it's no accident that girls who play sports are less likely to experience sexual assault, more likely to be successful in math and science and career fields that have been traditionally dominated by men, and it just so happens that all those career fields are well-paid careers. While we can celebrate our good fortune to be the beneficiaries of the sport experience, each of us should be thinking of this experience, though, as an opportunity to pay it forward, in appreciation for what our coaches and our parents have given to us, the support they've given to us, so that more girls can follow in our footsteps, so that fewer girls will be abused by this sexist media culture and environment that is so difficult to grow up in. So today, what I want to do is ask each of you to consider paying it forward by doing 5 things. I'm going to give you 5 things that everybody here can do. Each of you is capable of doing. First, pay attention to your moral compass. Trust that you know when something wrong is happening, and trust yourself to be able to say something about when something wrong is going on. When someone's treating someone else unfairly, especially treating girls unfairly, we have to feel and act according to our moral compass. And when that alarm sounds, we have to be brave enough to speak up if wrong is being done, because silence is the acceptance of wrong. 45 years ago, women physical educators, many of whom volunteered at no pay to coach women's teams, stood up for female students who they wanted to give the opportunity to play sports. And we have to be doing the same things today. Yes, we have more opportunities than girls did then, but there are still girls who are being denied the right to play. What about female athletes with disabilities? What about transgender students? What about athletes of color who are still significantly underrepresented in 19 of 24 men's championship sports and 21 of 25 NCAA women's championship sports. Severely underrepresented. We have ghettoized women of color and men of color into a very few number of sports. How about the women who comprise only 20% of all head coaches at the high school and the college level? Only 20%. Less than half of all the coaches of women's teams and less than 3% of all the coaches of men's teams. And no offense to Rob, what about the 20% of women who are athletic directors? But you count, Rob. You're on the right side of the fence there. All of us sitting here might think, well, I'm incapable of affecting these numbers. I mean, these have been produced over generations. But that is absolutely not true. You have to believe that change happens one person at a time with what you say to one person at a time. One small communication, and you can change what people do and say to each other. If you don't participate in making fun of any girl, just like any good parents, hits their kid at the back of the head and says, don't you dare talk to your friend that way. We are participating in change that way. When we don't accept our friends being disrespectful to each other. When others say that boys are better athletes than girls, that we have an answer. One of my favorite audiences to speak to are middle school boys. I love them because they have not yet learned the meaning of political correctness. They say whatever comes to mind, they're absolutely honest, and typically after I speak to a group like that, their boys will come up to me or raise their hand and say, Dr. Lopiano, isn't it true? Isn't it true that men are better athletes than women? We can run faster, we can jump higher, we can dunk, girls can't dunk. Aren't we better athletes? And when I was young, I got into this very convoluted, refutation of this myth. I would say, well, because of the male hormone androgen, boys can build up more muscle mass per unit volume of body tissue. And I would go on, and their eyes would glaze over. And finally, I came up with the right answer. I said, let me see now. Who is the better athlete? Sugar Ray Leonard, the lightweight boxer, or Muhammad Ali, the heavyweight boxer? And they would say, oh, Dr. Lopiano, they're both great athletes. They're both champions. They shouldn't fight against each other. One's 230 pounds, one's 170. And I would say, duh. And finally they would get it. Oh, so you mean that boys can have 7 or 8 classes in boxing, 7 or 8 different classes of competition in wrestling, and you don't recognize that girls should have their own chance to play against people of the same size and the same strength and capabilities. We have to be good at refuting myths, and we have to call that card whenever we hear those words being spoken. At the heart of being a leader is being brave enough to question a myth. So that's number 1, follow your moral compass. Number 2, if the heart of being a leader is confronting wrong, then the soul of being a leader is unselfishness, helping and encouraging others. And all I mean by that is I think it's incredibly important for all of us 5 times a day, start counting them, to tell a girl she can do something. I don't care if it's sport, math, science, you're good at that. Oh, you should be X, Y, and Z. Because that's exactly what boys are being told every minute of the day. I remember when my nephew was first born, I didn't get to see him for 2 weeks after he came home from the hospital. And I walk into my brother's house, and I say, where's the kid? And his wife says, in front of the television. So here's this newborn baby, 2 weeks old. He's sitting on the lap of his father with a New York Giants t-shirt on, 2 weeks old. He has a New York Giants Nerf football on his lap. His father has a New York Giants t-shirt on. They're watching the New York Giants on television. I know that this young baby feels the vibration of his father's body whenever there's a touchdown. I know by the age of 3, his bedroom will be a palace of athletics privilege, with every sport implement known to mankind. And that he will be told every minute what a great football player he's going to be, what a great baseball player he's going to be, how he's going to be great at everything. Every gift is going to be a message that tells him, you can play baseball. Contrast that to a gift we give to our daughters. You can take care of this doll that will never look like you. So we give these kids messages all the time. And Michael, his name is Michael, is Michael. Michael grew up, and he had to play every sport. He played t-ball, he played all of it. And he entered high school, and he was 6'4", 230 pounds. But he was a motor moron. He had no hand-eye coordination at all. I was embarrassed, an embarrassed aunt. I would take him into the backyard, I would try to have a catch with him, and I would kill him. He'd put his glove up and it would hit him. And so, he wasn't the sports guy. He's now at Johns Hopkins, he's majoring in opera and Italian. But anyway, so he goes to high school, and somebody sees this 6'3" guy walking the halls, the football coach. Football coach is Michael. I'll see you at 3 o'clock at practice. You're going to be a starting center. Michael says, I don't play football. Coach says, you do now. It's easy. All you do is you knock him down, you lay on top of him, you don't let him get up, you're going to be a great football player. And he made All-State. But those are the messages that are being given to little boys all the time, even beyond sports. You can, you can, you can. And just ask ourselves, how often are we giving these kinds of messages to young girls? How often are we saying, yes, you can? Third thing I want you to do. One of the most difficult leadership skills is learning what your voice is when you confront others with something that's wrong. It's a little nerve-wracking. It's like, I'm not, Donna may be able to do it. She seems like she's a little aggressive and a little outspoken, but I'm very shy. I'm not able to do this. All of us have our own voices. And the most effective voices are not loud voices, are not strident voices, are not angry voices. The best voices are voices who deliver messages with weight. In our current society, we are teaching youngsters and we're teaching each other how to be lightweights in communicating with each other. When we answer the text with this instant, mindless, I'll show you how quick I am and I'll show you how funny I am, but I'm not going to show you how bright I am. We're not practicing carrying heavyweight messages. I've just delivered to you heavyweight messages laden with fact. 250,000 television advertisements by the time she is 17 years old. 20% of all coaches are women. We have to get used to mastering facts when we talk to others and question others about beliefs that are just simply not true. Not only do we have to practice at being heavyweights in terms of communicating, we have to realize that good communication requires persistence over time. It amazes me when young professionals come back to me and say, Dr. Lopiano, I designed a great strategic plan. I told them exactly what they had to do and they didn't listen to me. I said, well, how many times have you professed this great plan? She said, well, just once. I said, so here you are, a new employee, you go to your boss, you give them one bright idea, and then instantly you have the arrogance to say that they should accept everything that you have to say, carte blanche. And they say, well, yeah. And I said, no. The way change happens, the real formula for change is repetition, persistence over time. Saying the same thing over and over again. In every speech I've ever given, I usually start, not like I started this one, but I start with the story of how I wanted to play Little League Baseball. And for 40 years, I've started every speech with that story. And for 40 years, at the end of my presentation, there will be somebody here who walks up to me and says, I never told anybody this, but you wanted to be a New York Yankee, I wanted to play second base for the Cubs. A woman whose dream was never realized. So this idea of consistently operating according to your moral compass, consistently, voicing a position against wrong over time is like a given. People aren't going to listen the first time out. And we have to trust that that's going to happen. Fourth thing I want you to do is make sure you have allies. Never go it alone. Never go it alone. Always create your own army. Another word for army is network. Men have great things to teach us in terms of how they've institutionalized the art of networking. I'll give you an example. So my nephew Michael turned 6 years old, and of course I have to attend his first t-ball game. So there we are. We have our lawn chairs, and grandma and grandpa, aunt, father, mother. Michael trots out onto the field in his uniform. He's one of those catchers where the chest protector is kind of, the bottom is dragging on the ground, the little kids. And I'm watching his coach, and his coach lines up all these six-year-olds against the chain link fence. And he gives the beginning of the season speech. And he looks at these guys and he says, "Men, we're about to start the season. The first thing I want to say to you guys is not everybody can be a starter. There are going to be some people who are going to be starting in the field, and there will be a lot of you guys who have to sit on the bench. The guys who sit on the bench are just as important as the guys who are starting. You have to take care of each other, you have to respect each other, and you're just as important sitting on the bench as you are if you're playing." And they follow. They hear that advice on every team they ever play, and they take care of each other for the rest of their lives. You go into corporate America, and I don't know how many women here have worked in corporate America, but it's always amazed me how invariably in a work group, there's a guy who just isn't pulling his weight. And you say to yourself, well, how does he keep his job? Why isn't he getting fired? What's going on here? And intuitively you know that if you raise that issue, you would be, that bitchy woman or something. This is not something that you should bring up. And it took me a little while to realize what was going on here. Guys don't fire the kid on the bench. They trade that kid to another team. They help him find another job. They don't make him go through the horror of, termination of employment, but they take care of each other for the rest of their lives. And we have to learn that kind of building of an army. The fifth thing that I want you to do is to trust everybody in this room, with the exception of a couple parents maybe, are athletes. And I want you to trust that you have a tremendous transferable skill in the confidence that you have acquired from sport. This is probably the gift that has the most meaning and the most usefulness to you for the rest of your life. And I'm not necessarily speaking about the reality of confidence, because we're all scared when we get into situations like going to be interviewed for a new job or confronting someone in the face of unfairness. We do have nerves in those situations. But what we learn from sport is the illusion of confidence. And we understand that it's as good as confidence itself. I remember the moment that I learned that lesson in sport. I was playing for a national championship women's softball team. I was 16 years old. I had tried out for this team. I was attending the first practice. I was as excited as you could possibly be. The practice opened up with batting practice. I was playing shortstop. The first hit off the first hit by the batter was a screaming one-hopper line drive in the hole between shortstop and third base. I went to my right. I laid out horizontal to the ground. I backhand stabbed this one-hopper. I scrambled to my feet. I planted my back foot. I rifled the ball across the first base. It was probably the most magnificent play I ever made in my whole life. And I stood there and I expected one of my teammates to say something. Say something like, nice play. Just a little thing. Nothing. The second base person starts walking over to me, and she looks at me and she says, Lopiano, she says, on this team, we never make anything look hard. I said, are you kidding me? That was really hard. That was the best play I ever did in my life. You're not listening, she says. We make everything look easy. If you make it look easy, the other team thinks you're great, and it's not an accident that you got it. And I didn't get it. I was 16 years old, I didn't get it. And all year, this was happening to me. My team didn't give me one atta-girl at any given point in time. I was fortunate enough to be able to pitch the first game in the national championship tournament. And this is when I learned the illusion of confidence. So I get up there as a pitcher. The very first pitch leaves my hand. And how many of you have ever been in a car accident? You know how time stops? Like everything goes slow motion? Right? So this pitch leaves my hand, and I know this is going to be a car accident. This is like the fattest pitch that has ever been thrown in humankind. And so it leaves my hand. I say to myself, oh my God. I say, Donna, get your glove up in front of your teeth very quickly. And so the glove starts to come up. The ball's about halfway there. And I'm saying, oh God, this is really a bad pitch. Maybe I'm going to kind of make myself really small too. And then I say to myself, it's 3/4 of the way there. I say, well, maybe this is a really smart batter who's going to take the first pitch. And the woman who was up was a woman named Sharon Backus, who coached UCLA for many, many years. And I look at her eyes, and her eyes are as big as saucers. And I say, oh, nope, no such chance. Sure enough, she swings at this pitch, and she hits it right back at me. And I do whatever, what every future Hall of Famer probably ever did, is I ducked. I ducked, and I immediately turned to look behind me, thinking, where do I have to play next, whatever. I look behind me, and the ball's not there. And I say to myself, I wonder if I caught it. And I knew that the illusion of confidence was not looking in my glove, just acting like I caught it, like it was no big deal, like it was an easy play. So I nonchalantly turned back to home plate, and I gave Sharon Backus, who was one step out of the batter's box, just a look in the eye, stuck my hand in the glove without looking, and pulled the ball out. Thank God it was there. And nonchalantly tossed it over to the first baseman to start, an out, around the horn, whatever. That was cool. That was very cool. And the ball came back to the first baseman. Her name is Joan Joyce. And she walks the ball back to me. She puts the ball in my glove and she says, did you know you had that ball? And I said to her, hell no. But that illusion of confidence is what makes people listen and respect you for whatever the reason. You may be looking at me right now and saying, God, she seems like a really comfortable speaker. How could she be so confident up there? How could that be so natural? You have no idea whether my knees are shaking. You have no idea whether I'm sweating or not, right? And you'll never know. So I want to close with an 800-meter story, but I just want to review what I just said to you because I don't want you to forget. 1, trust your moral compass. 2, encourage young girls every day, not once a day, 5 times a day. 3, be a heavyweight when you communicate. Master the facts. Make sure that you are persistent over time. 4, don't go it alone. Use your networks. Give money to the most outrageous organizations if you don't think you can be outrageous. Give money back to networks that are going to help, back to your college, back to your athletic department, because they're going to provide opportunities for girls. We have to play that change game. And last but not least, every day, use your gift of confidence to convince others that you know what's going on. So let me close with this story. 2 weeks ago, I was down in Austin, Texas again, where I spent 18 years. And I was speaking at the state high school basketball player of the year banquet, where they honored the male and female athlete who were the best basketball players in high school in Texas for the year. And I was sitting on the dais, and sitting to my right was a 6-year-old girl who was the little sister of the female recipient of the award. And I said, it's Dr. Lopiano, girl sitting next to me. I'm going to encourage her to do what she's doing. I turned to her and I said, do you play sports? And she says, yep. It's be like pulling teeth. So I turned to her again. I said, well, what sport do you play? And she said, track. Track. I said, what event? Do you run? Do you jump? Do you throw? What's your event? And she says, I run the 800 meters. 6-year-old. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with track, let me put this in perspective. You know the track that you always see, that's a 400-meter track, right? The 800 meters is a race where somebody says, run as fast as you can twice around this track and you die at the finish line. If you are a 400-meter runner and you get recruited by a college, and during the visit the coach says to you, maybe you'd make an better 800-meter runner, you don't go to that college. So here's this 6-year-old who's telling me she's an 800-meter runner. I'm not going to doubt her, but I excused myself to go to the ladies' room. I went to talk to her older sister. And I said, does your little sister, really run the 800 meters? And this young woman who's 6'4", she's a magnificent creature. And she says to me, yes, my little sister runs the 800 meters. I said, how did she get to do that? And she said, well, I have a twin brother. He and I run track. Our track club meets on Saturday mornings. We both run the 800 meters. And on Saturday mornings, my mother works, so we have to take our little sister, and she's the rabbit. The rabbit is, you ever tell your little sister, I'll give you a 1-lap head start. And then her brother and sister have 2 laps to beat her to the end of the second lap. So she's the rabbit. And I laugh and I say, now I understand how she runs the 800 meters, and I'm about to turn away, and she kind of tugs on my jacket and she said, Dr. Lopiano, I'm not sure you understand. So she runs the 800 meters because nobody told her she couldn't, and we told her she could. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Lopiano, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to come to Detroit, and I know I certainly enjoyed your message, your insightful messages, along with everybody else. And as a token of our appreciation, I would like to present you with a very unique Detroit gift on behalf of the Department of Athletics.